Welcome to EdTech Talk, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of educational technology, course design, and feature faculty insights in higher education. I'm your host, Joy Ray, and in this episode, we are joined by Amanda Davis and Lucious Oliver, who will be discussing the multimodal classroom. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So we are here. Why don't we get started by introducing a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do here at the college?
I'm Lucious Oliver. I'm the Director of Academic Success and Retention. I work with our Learning Center, with our tutoring program, our STEM lab, and our Writing Center. We also have what we call our digital literacy services. I've been at the college for 11 years. Started out as an instructional designer, moved up, and now I am over the Academic Success Center, again, which houses our tutoring program and our digital literacy program.
Thank you. What about you, Amanda?
Yeah, hi, I'm Amanda Davis. I've been here about 6 years. I served as an instructor in mathematics for the first 4, and for the last 2 years, I've taken on the role of department chair of mathematics. And in our history, Lucious and I were also co-leaders of a task force to start the multimodal process on campus here at Forsyth Tech.
Great. So we got some great resources to learn from today. Thank you so much for coming here. So how would you guys define a multimodal classroom?
Do you want to talk the tech side, Lucious?
So basically, in a nutshell, so multimodal is a solution that primarily came out of the pandemic year. So it gave an option for students to attend personally in class face to face, or they could also attend virtual. And so the real bottom line of multimodal is the flexibility and choice that the student has. And so it involves a setup where there are students that are in person, and there's a camera set up inside of the classroom, but there's also students that are joining via virtually at the same time. And so instruction is going on in person, also in a virtual space. And so the idea, again, is that it's flexible, and it's available to students to choose what option that they would like based upon their needs and preference.
The choice in how they get to learn is great for them. Amanda, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I would just say from an instructor point of view, we run our classroom as much as possible in a multimodal format so that the students have the same experience in the classroom as in virtual space. So we try to make sure that the same learning objectives are met. The students that are virtual still have the same attention, and that we're paying attention to them as well, and being inclusive in our classroom. We're also monitoring a lot of this technology at the same time. And I would say that really after the pandemic, we realized that this was useful for students even beyond the pandemic years. We have a lot of students with life issues and things going on that don't allow for them to come to campus on certain days. And so we realized this was actually an ongoing solution that we need to continue.
I like that, especially when I think about it in terms of just accessibility in general. A lot of things came about for accessibility laws, but it's really helpful for everyone. And I think that's the same case with this. So when we think about the pedagogy around multimodal teaching, what are some of the goals that we try to accomplish with creating a multimodal classroom?
Yeah, so I would start by saying that the goals or the experience inside the class, whether you're in person or virtual, are the same. In fact, what we strive to do is to make sure that that experience for the student is equal. It's not to diminish, if you're online, the experience, again, of the content. It is not something that's passive, so the student is not just watching a video stream of the instructor presenting content. There's opportunity to participate to group sessions. There's Q&A. When we've done our trainings here on campus, we've advised to set certain times that you actually engage the students that are online, not to forget that they are also a part of the experience of the learning. And also an opportunity for students to present as well. So it gives, the technology gives, and the platform that we use gives an opportunity for students to participate using technology in ways that they would not necessarily have the option of doing in the traditional classroom mode.
I would just add from a pedagogical point, you have to be a little more thoughtful as an instructor to really think about how to make sure everybody is included. So when you're sharing content, you know, students will say, you're not sharing the right screen, or, you know, you have to think a little bit more about making sure that you have content that everyone can see. Another thing that's a little tricky is with the camera setting, and whether you're in Zoom or Teams, depending on which platforms you're using, making sure that as you're writing, it's going through the annotation in the app and not just on a smart board or on the whiteboard where people at home who are virtual cannot see it. So there's some interesting pedagogical things to think about as you're working through your class. But ideally, making all the resources available. I think we've gotten to a point where in many cases we're making our assignments available both in Blackboard, in a digital format, and then if students are in class, maybe in the hard copy as well. But that lends itself well to having students who are virtual and in class as well.
I remember when the pandemic started, doing work meetings virtually and kind of having to troubleshoot those issues that came up, and now doing it in the classroom setting would be interesting as well. So what research has been done, and what kind of benefits do we see to students through research that has been done about multimodal teaching?
A couple of things that I've read recently. There was a study out that said 93% of students who were satisfied with their HyFlex format, which is what they call it in some other places. When I was looking up research, I think we tend to use multimodal here, but in many places, it's interchangeable with HyFlex. And so I was looking at some of the research, and I did read a study that it was, I believe, over 100 students in a college environment. 93% of the students said they were satisfied with the HyFlex format. And then I read another article recently from the National Institute of Health, where they kind of did a long-term study and put a few different studies together into a paper. And in all three of those studies, and I would say they were fairly significant, the sample size was around 161, so 161 students. They had half of the students who had been in strictly face-to-face, and then half who were virtual. And while they didn't say that one was necessarily more successful, what they were able to say is that statistically speaking, it wasn't a significant difference. So the students who were home learning virtually, they may have scored a few points below the students who were in person, but really they were kind of at the same level as far as grades go. So they're not seeing this overall, I guess, insufficiency for the virtual space.
I think a lot of people are concerned that there is a drop in engagement and participation.
Right.
So that is really great to hear. Lucious, do you have anything?
No, I would just simply add that, as Amanda stated, that, you know, the research does show that it leads to actual engagement, because increased engagement, I should say, because it's tapping into the different learning preferences that students use to engage in the content. And I think that, you know, with this offering, it allows students to learn and retain the information in the way that they prefer. And it again increases the engagement.
And I had one more thing, Joy. I was just thinking, I've been looking at the stats from our math department locally here, and we switched entirely. I think we're one of the few departments that all of our classes, other than our co-requisite courses, have shifted to multimodal. So the majority of our courses, with the exception maybe early college, some of the co-rec courses. And I looked at those numbers. It's a little tricky to look. I've been thinking about how to measure success here. We've been doing this for a while now in our department. I think since 2021 is where we really started strong with all of our classes. And I looked at the numbers from 21-22 school year to this past year. And overall, we've increased from 71.8 to 73.4%. So it has gone up. We've also almost doubled the number of students. So that's a little bit funny when you're looking at the numbers. But the other thing that we instituted at the exact same time, which makes it hard to measure, is our 8-week classes. So we do have an almost 2% increase, but we initiated 8-week classes and multimodal all at the same time. So it's hard to pull out exactly what's working, what things may not be working. But overall, anecdotally at least, we're getting good reviews on the multimodal format.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes, right? So it's kind of hard to pick and say what's adding. I think all of those things add to the success of our students, and that's great. And I like keep going back. I like that we keep going back to the students have a choice. They can read, they can watch videos, they can go in person, they can join remotely if they can't make it in person. And they are able to receive the same content in multiple different ways. And so if something didn't make sense, maybe it makes sense in a different format for them. And I think that's really great. I want to kind of switch gears and talk about your personal experience with it. So how do you guys utilize the multimodal approach? Amanda, I know that you've been doing it for multiple years. So how's that been going?
I am really comfortable at this point, and thankfully our faculty in the math department are usually pretty willing to try out new technology. So I think everybody there is pretty comfortable at this point. From the beginning of class, you really have to show up a little bit early because you're setting up Zoom, you're setting up the cameras, troubleshooting everything, making sure your content's all up. I usually have Tech Link up to take a quick attendance at the beginning. So there's a lot of pre-work before class even starts. And then I usually do a quick test run to make sure everybody can hear me. I can hear everybody in the classroom. What's really nice is that the microphones and speakers that we have enable it to sound just like our students are right in the classroom. So when they speak, it comes right from the ceiling. It sounds like they're right there with us and we can all have a conversation. So that's really nice. In class, I guess I would say, like I said, I usually have digital format and hard copy format of anything that I'm distributing. I'll share my screen. Usually I have everything on OneDrive, so I can pull that up as well at the beginning of class. Make sure I share my screen with sound so students can hear if there are videos or things contained inside. But really, the people at home see the same thing that's on our screen in the classroom, which is really nice. I do run breakout groups so that we can have student interaction with each other, because that's one of the things that is tricky, right? That's one of the things that might get left out when you have students that are in virtual space and you have groups of students in the classroom. So we really navigated how to set up breakout rooms. I send them with links to a Google form or a Microsoft form with the questions on it. So everybody's looking at the same content. One of the first issues that I found when we started this was trying to figure out how to get content out to everybody when they're in breakout rooms, because they can no longer see your screen. So the form, creating forms with things that I might have had on a lab before and asking those questions where everybody can see them and talk about them at once has been pretty successful as far as making sure everybody's speaking. I also tend to, throughout the class, like Lucious said, take time to check on the chat. I will put the chat kind of in the corner so that I can see if it pops up and I'm not missing anybody. Sometimes it can get hidden. That's a little tricky. So I try to keep the chat where I can see it so that I'm not leaving anybody out. I try to ask questions all the way through my class, every so many minutes, what do you all think about this? And then stop and allow for the people at home to also engage. And if they're not talking, I'll say, what do you think at home? How about so-and-so? And make sure that I look at my list and make sure that I'm acknowledging all the students that are in class as well as those that are in virtual space.
When you do breakout rooms, do you usually try to put all the virtual people in the same breakout room, or do you ever get to mix them up with people in person and virtual in the same group?
Yeah, usually I keep them separate. We usually have enough people that are virtual only because I haven't figured out as far as the sound quality in the classroom. If you have 5 people with laptops logged into the same Zoom and you're speaking and they're speaking and you can't mute and participate. So if they mute in the classroom, it won't be echoing through the rest of the class or through the rest of the Zooms. But if you mute, then you can no longer talk to the people who are in your virtual group. So that's definitely one of the things I haven't quite figured out yet.
We're all continuously learning.
Right.
That's what's
Right.
great.
But I do have, I have students who are virtual one day and then in person the next. So really, I think I only have one student this semester whose schedule doesn't allow for them to come in person. Their work schedule, they realized after the fact. So he comes every day in Zoom, but he's there every single day in Zoom. But most of the time, they're kind of in and out, which is nice because they do get to know each other in person. And then when they're virtual, I have 2 friends that are in my morning class and they've hit it off really well. And one has to be on Zoom Tuesdays and Thursdays because of a work schedule. And every day they say, hey, May, are you out there? They're talking to each other through the through the Zoom. So they are making connections, I think, because they're not always necessarily virtual and are in person to meet people and engage.
Lucious, what about you? Do you have what kind of experience do you have?
So not as quite as frequently as the classroom, but we also offer on our side of things through the Academic Success Center, our Tech Tuesdays are multimodal. And so it's a way for us to engage a larger audience. Obviously, for those who can't come to campus, we do offer this in sessions where they can join virtually. And as Amanda was saying, is that, it's important to make sure that whatever is presenting inside the physical space is also available to the students that are in virtual. And so we've seen great success with that. Again, with schedules and just, again, how we've scheduled these out throughout the semester and the academic year. A lot of times students and faculty, because those Tech Tuesdays are also available to faculty as well, can't come on campus or can't, fit it in to get there to the space physically. They can log in virtual. And again, it just attests to how the flexibility of the platform gives us an opportunity to engage a larger audience.
That's great because they have different ways to get the content. You can reach more people. It's great. So we kind of talked about the challenges in terms of doing groups and things like that. But what other challenges do you face with multimodal classrooms?
I think there are days when students in the virtual space don't engage. And even when you're trying to bring them in and keeping an eye on everyone, and it happens in a regular, in-person classroom as well. There are days that your class comes in and maybe it's 2/3 of the way through the semester and they're tired and they're, barely making it in at all. And so those days are it's a little bit more difficult with virtual students because you can look at students who are in the face-to-face classroom and maybe get a better read. So that's still a little bit tricky. Other challenges, certainly if tech goes down, there's a time delay between when you can get things fixed. I've learned lots of tricks along the way that when things don't work, how to fix them and that sort of thing. Overall, though, I'd say really at this point in the game, I'm fairly comfortable, and so it's not necessarily a whole list of challenges. I think one thing that faculty sometimes who haven't embraced this idea of a multimodal classroom, I've heard people say, what if, everybody stays virtual and you're the only person in the classroom? And I really don't see that. I don't see it very often. It's usually mixed, maybe half and half at the most. The only time that I really see a significant number in virtual space rather than in the classroom is if the weather's particularly bad, which makes this an extra plus, right? Because we're still all learning, even though, maybe it's not the best conditions to come to school. So yeah, I don't at this point find too many challenges.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think Amanda, when we first started rolling this out, the question always came up it just involves engagement.
Right.
Do the students leave their cameras on or off?
Right.
And there was the question: is that going to be policy? Is it going to be left up to the instructor? And we looked at various scenarios that could justify the camera not being on. And just really try to get the students, as Amanda said, to engage with the class and to make sure that they're participating. And so some of the challenges, like she said, that you would face in a traditional face-to-face classroom are also present there in the virtual space as well. And just making sure that the students feel comfortable being a part of it and not left out. It really is on the onus of the instructor to make sure that they include both environments in the lessons.
Do you find that most students utilize their camera when they are virtual?
No, not at all. I don't necessarily require it through the whole time. Honestly, I found when I do have a lot of students on at the same time and you have that Brady Bunch window going on while you're trying to present content, sometimes it's even a little more distracting than if the cameras are off. I do have them check in. I know I have a specific faculty member on our team who at the very beginning, when they take attendance, has them turn their cameras on just to make sure they're in a safe and good learning environment. Sometimes people will log in from their cars. Sometimes people are logging in from, different spaces. They do a quick check-in, have them turn the camera on to do attendance. And then usually students will turn their camera on if they're speaking. So if I call on them, then, they'll turn it on for a few seconds and then turn it back off. There's pros and cons to that. I worry about privacy concerns. I know sometimes my living room is not what I want to share in my background, and I can understand if people have lots of things going on with housefuls of kids and pets and all kinds of chaos. So that's a consideration, but also sometimes it's just a matter of not having the technology. So I'll have students that say, my webcam isn't working today, or my microphone isn't working, but I'm here in chat. And I just roll with it. Whatever's working today, as long as we can communicate and you're here with me and you've taken your time to come to class, then we'll make it work.
I think when people get started at whenever you do something new, it's going to be challenging and it's going to be difficult as you learn through the ways to troubleshoot things and knowing what resources are there to help answer your questions and help you, I think is going to be a huge benefit, as well as just trying to persevere and not get discouraged when, some days it seems like the students aren't participating, but they're still getting access to you and your classroom. And that, I think, is one of the big takeaways with this. So that's great. So let's go into application. How does utilizing a multimodal classroom increase a student's engagement?
So I would say it's heavily using active learning. We talk about accessibility, and so a lot of our courses follow the UDL, Universal Design principles, and so making sure that the content that we present is in various ways for students to engage. And so when you talk about students learning and their learning styles and preferences, multimodal really allows us to dial into that a little bit more so than perhaps in the traditional classroom, simply because you're using technology. And as Amanda said, that there's multiple ways of communicating with students in this platform. There's text, there's via the screen, face to face. There's ways that as an instructor, you can get content to the students by sharing annotations on a whiteboard or presenting a video, or even going to a website and walking them through certain things that you want to address in a lesson or whatnot. And so it really allows the students to utilize technology along with the learning of the content to their preference. And I think it leads to retention. It leads to for them learning concepts and comprehension of the lessons and the content that's being presented.
I would say from the most basic level, engagement used to mean if you were only in a face-to-face class, that if your car broke down, your childcare called out, you were sick, any of these things that come up in life, you missed class. You just couldn't be part of the class. And I have students all the time. I had a student last week who had his car broke down. He said, I'm going to have to come in on Zoom for a few days until I get everything worked out. I said, perfect. That's what it's here for. But that student would not be able to engage at all, really, if this had come up and we didn't have this option. So I'm finding that in these emergency cases, these students are able to be here and participate and have the ability to ask questions in real time. Because even if they were getting notes from a friend that was in the class that day and trying to relearn everything themselves, they wouldn't have anybody in real time to ask questions if they had, confusion along the way or things like that. Yeah, so I think on the most basic level, just being able to be there is the largest benefit of engagement.
So for instructors that have not yet started utilizing multimodal or plan to or want to, what kind of tips would you have for them?
So I would say familiarize yourself with the technology beforehand so that you're comfortable when students are in the classroom. We have many resources to do that. So you can certainly find training in, I think it's through our CTLE at this point, where somebody will come and walk you through it. Making sure that you are familiar with your Zoom, some classrooms have a new line board, some have a touch screen monitor system. Even when I start out, after I've been doing this for several years, I still take time before the semester starts to go check out my classrooms, see which technology is in the classroom if I haven't been in that classroom before, so that I know what I'm looking forward to. So if I have a new line screen or if I have a touch screen monitor, I might need to bring my tablet, or, there are different things that I might have to set up. So familiarizing yourself with the technology so that it's not intimidating before you start is probably a key factor. I think most of us are pretty familiar with the Zoom platform at this point, just from meetings and the things that we have to do as faculty. But really being able to monitor the classroom environment in two spaces at once, sometimes that's a little bit overwhelming. I will say that it gets much easier as you go. So with more practice, the easier it is. When I go in now, I know I set up these 4 things, and that's kind of the way we start every day. But at the beginning, if you can prepare as much as possible before the students come to class, the more comfortable you'll be in the setting. But also, I would say don't be afraid that students will think you don't know what you're doing. They'll help you along the way. They help me all the time. If I don't know how to do something, I had a speaker that wasn't working in the classroom the other day, and I had a student up front and said, Stannis, do you want me to look at that for you? I said, sure. Then 5 minutes, he had the microphones and speakers working. So really, students know that there's a learning curve in that technology as well. But I think in the long run, they're really grateful to have the option to be in either space, depending on how their day is going.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback off of that. You know, preparation is the key. When we designed these rooms, the idea was to not allow the technology to get in the way. And so it's pretty seamless. Again, once you understand the routine of just getting in there and practicing, setting up your classroom. If you're familiar, as Amanda said, with the Zoom platform, a lot of it's the same. It's just a matter of how you're broadcasting it out. Some classes, as she said, use the new line boards, touch screen boards. Some still are using projectors. But either regardless of what the technology that's in the classroom, as far as multimodal, the setup is the same. Each class that is outfitted with multimodal equipment has the ability for the students inside the class to speak freely. There's microphones that capture that conversation inside the class, and so the students that are in virtual, they can hear as if they were in the classroom. And if they do unmute their mics in the virtual space, they're able to also be heard in the classroom. There are speakers in the classroom. And so it's really the design that we went for is the look and feel of a real classroom for both audiences. And so if you can just imagine being familiar with, again, how to manage both spaces as you deliver the content is probably the trickiest thing. But as Amanda said, once you start practicing and once you get into it, it becomes second nature. It's nothing to be intimidated of and to be afraid of at all.
And on one last thing on that respect, I would say our ITS department and the CTLE, we have a lot of resources. So if something goes wrong, I've called a few times this semester with just little things that have come up, and they're there on call. They help me out every time, get things fixed up in the middle of class with a few minutes in between when I realize there's a problem. A lot of times they can remote in and help you out. CTLE's here. We have trainings. We have a lot of support out there. So you're really not on your own trying to figure it all out yourself. If you have questions, we have a lot of good resources to reach out to.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Is there anything you think we missed or that you want to add before we close?
Maybe just that I'm pleased that this has continued and that more and more people are taking it on. I hear from students on a daily basis that they're grateful if they have a doctor's appointment or have to be at the DMV and their schedule doesn't allow them to get back and forth in time and they're still able to be part of class. Oh, the other thing that I didn't add earlier was we also record all these sessions in our classroom. So really, if a student can't be in person, can't be virtual, or something happens to their tech halfway through, they can go back and watch the recording later. Or even if they're in face-to-face and they say, I remember how to do this problem in class, but when I got home, I couldn't remember. They can go back to the recording. So there's really, 3 different outlets that they can use and still be part of the classroom. So I'm glad that this is really taken off and that more people are looking into using multimodal classrooms.
Yeah, hopefully we have helped alleviate some fears that they might have had, and hopefully we have sparked some excitement to get started. Lucious, do you have anything that you want to close with?
No, just don't be afraid of it. It is a phenomenal technology and a way for us to engage our students. And so if you have questions, please reach out. Like we said, there's plenty of resources available for your questions to be answered and a lot of help that help you along getting set up and being successful using that platform.
Great. And if you guys aren't able to find those resources, definitely reach out to the CTLE team and we can help create things that might be missing for you guys. But thank you for joining us on this episode of Ed Tech Talk. Tune in next time for more insights, discussions, and inspirations in the world of higher education. Until then, keep on leading and learning. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Joy. Thanks.